especially when we are remote, when we are working from home. Everybody has started talking about that we need zero trust. Talk about the leadership, they say we want zero trust. It used to be a buzzword. Like in every talk of mine, I've said that it's a buzzword. But in the past few months, I would say 6 7 months, it is not like it's not a buzzword anymore. So let's talk about what it is basically, and what people are talking about, and what it means to us. So most of the things um, our great host has mentioned, so I'm not going to talk about myself. I'm going to straight jump into the talk. So this is what we call it as a traditional model, or traditional security model, wherein when we started off with security way back in 2005-6, and this was my assumption that anything or anyone who's within the organization, within the four boundary walls, that person is actually a nice person, and everyone who's outside, they're trying to take control of our data, they're trying to get into our network and do all the not so good things. So now, if you think about it, the current scenario, this is not the situation anymore. We all are sitting anywhere in the world. Like I've been shuffling around in the past months, and I'm working from anywhere. It's like any work from anywhere. Even I would say not for work from home, but work from anywhere. That is the kind of model. So does it suit it, especially with the kind of modern environments that we have? Not really. And if you cannot relate to it, I'm sure you can relate to this kind of an architecture wherein as a network person, we've built all these diagrams especially to make the clients understand, people understand for whom we were working, that yes, this is how an architecture looks like. We have so many firewalls here, there, and everywhere, and different zones are there, different networks are there. And this has been like a kind of a environment wherein we have trusted zone, untrusted zone, and only the people in the trusted zone are allowed to access. And the kind of a philosophy wherein trust insiders, but what about the insider threats? I have seen people who leave the organization and still pose risk to the organization. I have seen it with few people, and there was one recent uh, hack which happened on the really top shots. And I wouldn't want to name the company, but then that was from the insiders. Like the account for the top shots were hacked. And if somebody like something like this happens, would you trust an insider? I doubt. Similarly, if there's only one door open with multiple layers, if I bypass those layers by any chance, let's say I have everything right, I have SIM solution, I have IDS, IPS, I have everything right, but I get into someone's account using their credentials. If it's an administrator, which means I have access to anything and everything. Nothing can save me or save my organization from that. And how about when we are talking about safeguarding non-critical information? Who wants to save non-critical information? Like, why do you have to keep saving that? And sometimes what happens is we tend to miss on the right information, but safeguard the non-critical information. And this is like the normal thing that happens. So this is basically the current landscape that we have, wherein we have we've moved from the traditional or the old model wherein network packet firewalls were there to hold the control networks. Like all the traffics could be traced back and can be marked as inside or outside. But this has changed. This has completely changed. We are all we are all working from home. We are all not depending on the buildings or the office premises or the traditional data centers. We are talking about cloud. We're talking about we have perimeterless environment. And on top of it, we're talking about privilege access, not only like giving to one person, but to accounts. So how should we manage it? And on top of it, we now live in the world of advanced persistent threats that create a growing and changing risk to the organizations. How would you handle it? Especially if it's a financial organization, it's a big pain. Talk about intellectual property, talk about reputation of a company. Now you're losing the money and you're losing the reputation. What happens then? Talk about Equifax, what happened to them? So expanding access and obtaining credentials is an essential part of APTs. I've seen that. I've gone through all the listing that has happened and uh, what APT talks about. So when the perimeters have disappeared, people can log on remotely. Cloud has stepped in, and everyone is a tenant on a shared server and moving towards this particular digital transformation journey. And when I talk about the breach statistics, we are spending more money on security each year. People have started to understand that yes, security needs a chair on the board. So when it actually is happening, why are we getting less secure than the more secure part? And zero trust provides a better framework to look at cybersecurity and rethink the way we are working on the security or we are doing the security. If I talk about the number, so cybersecurity cost is set to increase to 6 trillion by 2021. That was by cybersecurity ventures. And the cost of a data breach, that is 3.62 million. That's a huge amount. And that's a study by Ponemon Institute combined with IBM. And if I talk about 80% of the data breaches happen because of the privilege access abuse. Now that's a big number. So if these numbers are so big, why it's so worrisome? And the worrisome picture is that the companies that are getting reached, they're not even getting reached once, but sometimes 4 5 times in a couple of years. And that's more critical. And we are spending more money on security each year. So why not this happening? I'll tell you an example. Like just a couple of years back, 4 million customers of a US cable provider were exposed to the internet after a contractor failed to properly secure a public cloud database. Now, if a malicious person steals that information and shares it on the social media or on the internet or anywhere, how much harm it can cause? It is going to be a big problem. And vendor failed to limit external access to the public cloud service. Now this is like the basic thing that we really need. So it becomes even more important when we talk about things in the cloud, because we all are stepping in the cloud now, or I would say we've almost stepped in the cloud. So let's talk about server and client architecture, wherein when we have a client, can we trust the client? Can we trust the users or the clients? I would say no. We've seen the cases happening, or it's just evident that we shouldn't be. And similarly, can we trust the server? Servers can get breached and anyone can do any harm to it. Similarly, can we trust the network? No. So when we don't trust the network, what can we do? Or what is the lesson that we're getting out of it? Trust, but always verify, or what it is. Now, this is the kind of situation that I am in. What I am going to do. So zero trust steps in and it says, never trust, always verify. Even if it's your best friend or the known organization, never ever trust. So always make sure that in any organization, even we can relate to the zero trust concept in our daily lives, wherein we can never trust people. Once, for example, I have a best friend and I tell all my secrets to my best friend, and one fine day we had a huge fight and all my secrets go out. What could go wrong? If I can't keep my secrets, can I think that my best friend is going to keep my secrets for always? Like nothing should happen to your best friend, but yeah. So that's like a not so good approach. So zero trust says to trust no one, not even users behind the firewall. In short, it flips the mantra from trust but verify into verify and or always verify and never trust. So you again heard the word trust, and I will be using this word in the whole presentation, wherein I will be advocating about that. Make sure we are secure, we are taking care of our trust properly. And zero trust advocates the creation of zones and segmentations and keeping the sensitive information, and not just the network. It talks about validating the devices, validating the users, maintaining their privileges, which we're going to talk about in the full presentation. So let's start with how it all started off. Like over the years, security models have transitioned. Many of us have seen the first came access control list. We all had access control list. We were managing it, people going in, out, the traffic going in, out, and everything was going smooth. But then there were a lot of challenges wherein any could have been a problem. Then came role based access control, and now principles of least privilege. Especially, I would say now people are started to combine principles of least privilege and role based access control to give a different sense to a model called zero trust model. And the problem with, if we are using just role based access control, is that um, if it's allowed, if there's a proper permission, or there's a permission that is allowed to subjects, and that subject moves from one organization to another, or one role to another, the permission still stays with that person, which is a big problem. If I am part of the network team, and suddenly I move to security, like I'm very good at managing the network, and that's what happened to me. I was part of the network team and I moved to security team. But if I still carry my network team privileges, and somebody asked me to do a rule change on the firewall, and I do it, is it allowed, or is it supposed to happen? Not at all. If I am supposed to be with one team, I have to carry that role itself. I have to wear only that hat. If I'm carrying multiple hats, somebody can snatch it and be the owner of that. So who will be responsible for it? I will be. People will be thinking that it's my hat and I have done all the wrong to them. So security thing has become, or security perimeter is a thing of the past, wherein with the cloud adoption and advancement in all these technologies, all the enterprises or organizations must assume that the environments are hostile. And especially in cloud, we are giving away our data to the cloud providers. Even though we trust them, we are signing the contract, but still we have to go with that kind of an assumption that our environment is hostile when we are in the cloud. So this is a core tenet of zero trust, wherein we understand this, that we have to take care of our own data. Even though cloud providers say that I'm going to take care of some things, it's our responsibility also. That's when shared responsibility model comes into picture. So read the rules and regulations and the kind of terms and conditions, I would say, or privacy policies that they have. And it becomes even more important that or essential, that we need a model of trust, verification, and a continuous evaluation of that trust, so that we have further access. We are avoiding all those lateral moments that happen because if somebody gets to our network. Now, when we talk about zero trust architecture, it is basically kind of controlling our own environment. So the supporting system behind it, it's all thing is called a control plane, and every other component in the whole control plane, that's being referred to as a data plane, which is being coordinated and configured by the control plane. So control plane manages the data plane. And in zero trust, we first identify a protect surface. Now, I'm talking about so many jargons, wherein, so protect surface is nothing but it's made up of network's most critical and the most valuable resources, like data, assets, applications, services. So once we know, okay, these are our critical data, assets, services, and applications, we are going to manage it. Now, no two organization can have the same protect surface, because they have their um, unique applications, unique servers, different kind of data and services. So we have to be mindful of it. If we are talking about zero trust and we are talking about our own data, we have to categorize what exactly do we need. And with this identified, we can identify a lot of things, because we know our environment. We can know where the traffic is going, who is accessing the environment, who the users are, which applications they are trying to use, they're trying to access, where they're trying to connect. And then based on that, we can enforce the policies. And it also means that we don't have a huge network, so that we don't get to know about what's happening, but we have a smaller chunks of networks, and we maintain that. So we have the visibility of our own network, and we are not getting prone to all these not so good attacks which happens, and especially by the apts. So what we can do is we can create the perimeters by deploying a segmentation gateway, which can also be called as next generation firewall. And when we talk about segmentation gateway, we also get with this we also get the granular information or visibility into our own traffic, which is the need of the hour, especially from the application layer perspective. It really needs it. And uh, it's also very important to know who's trying to get into our protect surface. If it's an unauthorized user, let's stop it then and there. If somebody is trying to exfiltrate the sensitive data, why are we allowing them? So once we build the zero trust network with the right policies that we need for our own organization, we can continue to monitor and maintain it. And that's like one important aspect, that we gain the visibility and context of our traffic, users, and application, and we keep on monitoring it. Now, the most important question: is it a good fit for the cloud? Like, zero trust people talk about it, that it's a good fit for the cloud, but is it so? Let's check about it. So in my perspective, I would say yes, it is. Now why? Because when we have a lot of enterprises who are eager to move to the cloud and build their digital everywhere network, especially the organizations who are built on the cloud itself, so they have to have all of this. So they have so much of sensitive data, like PII, personal health information, intellectual property information, payment card data. Now, so much of workload which is going around in and around the cloud. So it becomes evident that we understand that do we need to protect the data inside the cloud? Do we need to have do we need to store the data in the cloud with some recommendations, or we need to have some access control mechanism in place? Do we have to be a vendor neutral? Because I have seen cases wherein people do the vendor lock-in and suddenly get stuck. If I am with one vendor and something happens to the vendor, I'm stuck there. And if they say that I am not going to go ahead and keep your loads, I don't have an organization from that day itself, from that moment itself. So we need to be very considerate about the vendor lock-in is not there. And you would be thinking that it's not a security aspect, but it is an aspect of zero trust, that we consider the vendor lock-in. We assess the risk. We assess the how much risk it's going to cause to an organization. And especially with the hybrid kind of model if we are going to be in, then we monitor the environment. And last but not the least, we also have to be very cautious of the patches that are going to be there. So we have to be stay up to date. Now, when we are talking about implementing a zero trust, especially in an enterprise network, where we have so many applications, we have on-premise data center, we have everything. So we have to be very considerate about using CASP. We have to know that where exactly we're going to be placing the proxies. We're going to be using remote access VPN or not. Who's going to be accessing the data? Where it's going to be? So we have to be very knowledgeable about our own network. And there's one important aspect of the cloud applicability, or when we start using the cloud and understanding the zero trust network, or zero cloud people have started to call about it. So we need to make sure that we are implementing these things on our private applications, which are in public cloud. We're not just thinking about the external facing applications only. We are keeping we're keeping these practices for the SaaS applications that we're going to be using, even though that in the SaaS platforms we are only managing the identities, but then that's very important to manage the identities well. Think about, we have access to one of the cloud security provider, and that's a scanner, and somebody gets our credentials, and I am a person who runs the scans on the network. And if somebody has my credentials, because it's a SaaS account and I lost my credentials, they will be able to see all the vulnerabilities in my network, and they can exploit. And at the same time, that person might be able to run scan on my network and try and figure out what else is there. Like, to give you an example, so we were doing just one activity in my previous stint, wherein we were trying to understand our own network, what all cameras are there, what all printers are there, can we try and get something out of it. So for once we realized that these camera devices are accessible, they have a page, and then we can try and access. So we started looking for default credentials. And we started looking for default credentials, we got to know, okay, this is a vendor, and now let's check what could be the credential. Now there was some 25, 20 or 26 were listed out there, and after fifth or sixth attempt I realized that we got into the camera. Now if we can get into an organization camera, that can be as severe as getting into someone's home, getting to know whether they're saving the money or they're saving their valuables, and just do anything with that. So it's very, very important to secure the SaaS applications. And DevOps in the cloud is becoming another big thing. So zero trust can be implemented really, really well in the DevOps environment as well, not just the perimeter or just at certain places. So another important aspect which is managing IAM. I've talked about SaaS, but it's like one big thing that we have to consider, because if we don't take care of IAM, which is identity and access management, we could be losing a lot of information. So let's start with that. What all things are very, very important for zero trust? I've given you enough gyan, so let's get into the facts of it. Now we have to categorize the data. So zero trust in the cloud requires complete visibility of the cloud apps and the data being stored, and who is accessing the data when it's doing that. We need to appropriately categorize the data, that if our data is confidential, internal, restricted, or for public. Because if we are not categorizing it, we might be saving the data which is not at all required to be secure. And ultimately, what will happen? The security team will be concentrating or focusing on protecting the data which is not needed. Or they might be monitoring the data which is not needed, or which might not be so much of confidential to the organization. So where possible, data should be safe, even if it leaves the device, apps, infrastructure, and networks, or we have to keep the organization controls in place. Another thing is that we have to understand the current setup. I can blabber about it that we need to categorize the data, but before that, we need to understand our own current setup. We need to have a detailed look at it, like which location the current data is, what all regulations could be there, how should we categorize the data, and once we categorize the data, how we're going to be placing that, what encryption we would be needing. And organization has all the rights to limit access to the data, especially on the permissions. If to give you an example, if I am a developer or a security person, do I need access to the production instance where the load is running? I don't think so. I would need. So what I can do is we can segregate the roles. So again, I'll give you my personal experience wherein I was working with one of the clients long back, and we were starting off with the cloud thing. And when we were starting off with the cloud thing, they had over 200 accounts on the cloud. 200 accounts on the cloud. Every developer is running using the root keys, and they're using the root accounts, they're using the main accounts, master accounts everywhere. Okay, they were fine, they were running it fine, everything was going smooth. But one fine day there was one key that was lost. Okay, is there a problem? Absolutely. And fortunately, we were able to secure the account. But if that doesn't happen, what could go wrong? That account is gone forever, that application is gone forever, the data is gone forever. So it's important to not use the master accounts anywhere and everywhere. It has to be only for the critical purposes that is required. We can have multiple administrator under that root account, we can have multiple roles, policies. How about manage that? Then comes the least privilege, or principles of least privilege, wherein least privilege access rights is a fundamental principle of zero trust security. So overly extensive security is one of the key issues. which people have seen, especially with consumer identity and access management and the kind of apps that we use every day. I'm sure you might have some other shopping apps. Right now, I'm doing all the shopping on the online apps. Uh, I'm not a big fan of online shopping, but then the the new times have made me realize that I think this is also something which we can do. Or I might do, because I can't go to the market and I can't trust that if I am wearing a mask or the other person is like what kind of situation I am in. So similarly, um, if we don't have the principles of least privilege, and we are not authenticating the users rightly, and I have access to anything and everything, I can do anything and everything I would do, even though you talk to me or not, or you tell me or not. So user access to cloud resources must be first authenticated and authorized. If you're not needing the access, let's remove it. We can use SAML based authentication. We can use OAuth, OID, the new mechanism that are in place. Now you talk about that. How about legacy softwares, legacy applications? There are legacy applications wherein you can bridge them with a reverse proxy, and then you can connect it further with the newer technologies that we have. A lot of good reverse proxies or web seals are there to support the legacy applications with these new authentication and authorization mechanisms, and wherein we can use granular role based permissions as well. And there's another thing that is coming into the limelight is just in time least privilege, wherein if I need to run certain load at 6 p.m. in the evening till 10 p.m., I would only allow a role to be there for that during that period. And that's when function as a service comes into picture, and that runs amazingly in the cloud. And that's one beautiful thing that I like about all the cloud portions that are running. So raise your hand if you have multiple accounts. I have like tons and tons of accounts, and I am so paranoid that I have multiple Gmail accounts or multiple accounts for my own services. Like I want to run a LinkedIn with this, or my social handle with it. There's one for my banks, there's one for my own personal emails or something. So I have so many accounts, and not just my email accounts, but I have social media accounts and so many that. So how should we handle it? And especially when we are talking about identity and access management, which first started off with wherein we have so many internal applications. And over the years, in 1980s, I would say, in 1980s, we all started off with this kind of a principle wherein identities were not rightly defined, and we were able to get into someone's identity. But then we started identifying the identities, we started talking about the governance of identities, we started talking about role based access control, and even single sign on. But now, uh, like I said, over the years we have matured, identity system has matured, and we have started to talk about context aware access, wherein it's trying to gather information about that, where we are, what we are doing with our own accounts. And if we look at the market from past 10 years, MFA was a big pain, but now everyone needs MFA. Like all of my accounts have an MFA. Or I would say I have push notifications sent to my phone or my devices. So there are modern solutions available, so which can handle identity and management systems. And if I have to tell you or give you stats, 10% of us probably still have the word admin as the password. Trust me, still people do use that. And if I talk about my demo accounts or the test accounts, absolutely, there are certain ones which still have. But is it a good practice? I would say no, never keep that. Another aspect that comes into picture is when I say context aware access, it goes deep down into risk scoring, automation, and application only access. um, Now with adaptive access, when it is talk of the town, it says that knowing that who has the access, or enabling the right user to have the right access to the right data for the right reason from the right location. And if we don't do it, we are in trouble. So remember, enabling the right user to have the right access to the right data for the right reason from the right location. It is very, very important. And machine learning only helps us with that. And artificial intelligence, it can give us the right view wherein what do we know about the user, what do we know about their device. All the access to the services can be authorized. If, let's say, I am in Delhi right now, can I be in Philippines in 1 hour? Technically, practically, no, it's not possible. But suddenly somebody starts logging into my account, or somebody gets into my place, turn off the camera and start speaking. Would you say that I'm the right person? No, that's not right. So adaptive access gives a meaning to identity and access management to the next level. Now, another important aspect is monitoring and logging. Now, when we build a right system, we need to have right monitoring in place, and we need to have the monitoring zone wise, so that we know what zones are doing what. We analyze data access properly. We need to have audit trail for it, not just for the audit purpose, compliance purpose, but to get to do the postmortem of all the incidents that happen. Or if something happens to a network, we were not able to detect it, but later on we get to realize it, we can go back and check our network. At the same time, network segmentation is very, very important. We get to know that we are only allowing the traffic which is intended. We define the perimeters, we define the zones, we define the segments, we categorize the sensitive data, enforce segmentation using physical and virtual security controls, not just one control. We can also establish the access based on these controls, using the microperimeter designs which are there. And last but not the least, encrypt all network traffic regardless of the origin. Now comes a point: policies and procedures. It seems like odd that why do we need policies and procedures, but to extend the zero trust to the cloud requires security delivered from the cloud. And security from the cloud always needs to have a policy which is enforced correctly. And by having users and offices connect directly to the cloud, it becomes even more important, wherein we don't have firewalls. We have only virtual firewalls which are securing us. We have a VPN, we have a network, and cloud architecture is simplified. So IT governance and policies are very, very important to manage, but must be comprehended across the organization and across the applications. Now, another thing which I want to talk about before we wrap up this talk is how do we implement it right. We need to identify the sensitive data, map the sensitive data, that where it's flowing, architect the zero trust micro parameters, continuously monitor them, and enforce security automation. And automation is not a foe of security team, but it's a friend. It gives us more time to do much more, detect what could go wrong in our organization, and being more proactive. So can we say trust and always verify? Can we say that? Never trust and always verify is the mantra. And one thing which I want to highlight is that tech moves very fast. Never think that we have just gotten to where we think that we know it all. It is never the case. That's where you know that you have to you're going to have a fatal fall. So no single technology is associated with zero trust, and it's not just a product, or it's a strategy, it's a perspective. And no product can bolt on top of existing security strategies. So what we can do is we can have a better visibility into the data network assets. We can have less operation costs but more insights on what we are doing. And can we say identity is becoming a new perimeter? Absolutely. That starts from there. So let's verify with single sign-on, have MFA, we verify devices, applications, and learn and adapt to the machine learning and AI technologies that we have. Take the baby steps. You don't have to do it all at once. And one important thing is that if you have a big organization and you say that I'm going to implement zero trust at one building, no, it has to be implemented everywhere. So here are a few of the references around zero trust. You can reach me anytime on my Twitter at InfosecVandana. I'm there on LinkedIn. I'm very much reachable. Feel free to DM me or reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'll be more than happy to take your inputs, feedback. or connect with you, have a discussion around this topic if you're really interested, or if you have something in mind that I can add to my future research that I'm doing. Thank you so much from India. All right, let me see how I can stop sharing.
Sorry, I'm here.
Yes.
All right, so we're waiting for them to log in their questions. Oh, there. It First off, before I ask the question, I really love the talk. It's more inclined to information security management, so quite brilliant to listen to. Then again, going back to the question, is it ideal, recommendable to totally trust or rely the third party service organizational control SOC to or SOC? Uh, Two type reports provided by cloud service providers on the security of their cloud infrastructure. What are the items that you think organizations must look out in the cloud hosting agreement contracts when it comes to ensuring the level of reasonable trust on the enforcement of security controls?
See, when I talk about totally trust or rely on the third party service organization controls, um, there are two things that comes into picture, because I have worked on SOC 2 controls and other things. I have realized that there are a lot of organizations which might not let you access their environment, but they let third party do it for you. So at certain point, we have to trust them. We cannot totally trust them, but this is the way to go. We cannot fight with them and say that we need to pen test your environment. Sometimes we have to understand, we have to consider these things. And when we talk about hosting agreements and contract, we have to make sure we understand what we have to manage, where we have to manage, and how much is our responsibility. Think about if we have a AWS account and we have S3 bucket and we are not securing it correctly, who is at the problem? Whose data is going away? It's our data. I've seen a lot of top breaches happening because of that. And we know there are top organizations which are being hacked because of that. So while performing the contract, we need to understand first our network, that what we have and what we are planning to push to the cloud. Because if we don't know what we are pushing to the cloud, we're just going to sign the contract and we'll be in trouble. So